Hello everyone, it's Robin the Delta Crafter, and today I'm here with you sharing a card making process for this slimline card that I've made. If you're new to my channel, welcome to my channel. So glad you're here to join me. And if you're returning to my channel, hi everybody, it's so great to see you again. So I'm going to be sharing, excuse me, this card making process with you, like I stated before, of how I made this slimline card. This card was made using the August 2021 large die of the month from Spellbinders. I also used the glimmer kit of the month to make the sentiment in the middle. So I'm going to be sharing this whole process with you today. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about some of the supplies I used to make this card. For the for the layering pieces that are in the middle of the card, I used this Sherbet Smooth cardstock pad from scrapbook.com. This is the 4.5 by 8, 4.5 by 4.25 by 5.5 set of the sherbet colors. And so I chose 3 colors out of this this pad to use for my layering pieces, and I'll show you those when I show you the die set. So I used that, and then I also use for my for the large die cut slimline panel, I used 2 pieces of 80-pound Nina Classic Crest Solar White cardstock. I'll leave a link to this in the description below. So I cut the die cut piece twice. So I used this Nina Classic Crest to do that. And then for my foiling, I used this champagne hot foil from Spellbinders as well. And I used that champagne foiling paper on the glimmer of the month. So I used the sentiment and the inner hexagon for the foiling, and then I used this die to cut the hexagon out. And then the thing that inspired the whole card was this large die of the month from Spellbinders. So I'm going to take this out real quick. As you can see, this is a slimline die. It's not a mini slimline. This is a regular slimline die. And then these 3 hexagons in the middle actually layer to make a detailed hexagon shape that can be inserted inside this hexagon in the bigger card. So you can see each one of these is a little bit more detailed than the other one, than others, and so that's what makes the layering. So we're gonna go ahead and get started by cutting the base. And like I said, we're going to cut that twice out of Nina Classic Crest paper. And then I'm going to cut these hexagons out of the smooth cardstock from scrapbook.com. So let's go ahead and get started putting this card together. Off camera, I went ahead and die cut and glimmer foiled all the pieces that I was going to need for this card. This particular die set comes with an outside ring or outside frame that cuts the panel, as well as the inside part that cuts the detail of the panel. So that's what I'm showing you here, is how these 2 die cuts are actually separate die cuts. So I used some Easy C tape to tape those together so that to ensure that I get the same cut both times that I cut it. So I cut each panel twice. And I'm going to go ahead and link as many products below as I possibly can. So you can see here that a lot of the pieces just fall out really, really easily from the die cut. That's because it cuts really well. But there are some parts that don't cut and come out as easily. So I'm going to use 3 different tools to help me get all the little small bits and pieces out of the die cut. The first tool that I'm going to use is the Sizzix magnetic die brush. And this actually comes in a kit. And it's going to be the quickest and easiest and fastest way for me to get all those little polka dots out of the die cut. So I'm just going to run the brush across the edges of the die cut that I want to get all the little bitty pieces out of. And what I want you to notice is that I'm kind of holding the die cut at an angle. What I've noticed is that if I give it a little bit of lift, the parts and pieces come out a whole lot easier. So I'm holding the paper at an angle just to ensure that I have space for the die cuts, little parts and pieces to fall out. So I'm going around pretty much because there's lots of little parts and pieces in this particular die cut. So I'm finishing up that here, and you can see there are just a couple of hexagons that did not fall out, and that's because they did not cut completely. So what I'm about to do now is take my second tool, which will be my Cutter B precision scissors, and I'm going to cut off those extra pieces that didn't cut completely. So here I am taking those scissors and kind of lifting up the hexagons to make it easier for me to cut them out. And I'm going to go in with my scissors. So notice here that if I did not have these precision scissors, there would be no way I would be able to cut that hexagon out without also cutting that thin piece of paper that's a part of the design that remains, the part that we want. If I had any other type of scissor, I probably would have cut the whole thing out. So the precision scissors, these Cutter B precision scissors, I've had this particular pair probably almost close to 2 decades now. But I love these scissors, and they never fail to give me the precise cut that I'm looking for. So I've gotten most of the parts and pieces out. There's just a few little dots that are hanging around. So now I'm going to use my Tim Holtz retractable craft pick just to poke out those last few little pieces that are still remaining in the die cut. This little desktop vacuum, you guys, is one of my favorite purchases of all time. It makes quick cleanup. As you can see here as I'm running it across my craft mat. But it makes quick cleanup of all the little bitty parts and pieces. And to be honest with you, the mess that is created sometimes is what keeps me from using some of the tools and stamps and dies that I have, because sometimes some things you use, it just is not worth the cleanup because stuff gets everywhere. But now that I've had this vacuum, it has changed my mind on using things. So I'm going to use the Barely Arts glue with its precision tip on the bottle to get in all the nooks and crannies to glue the 2 panels together. Those are some very, very thin strips of paper and lines in the hexagon shapes, which is also what makes this die so beautiful. But because it's so thin, it's hard to get the glue where you want it unless you have a very, very fine tip. And so the Barely Arts glue, not only is it a great glue, but the precision tip helps to make it easy to get the glue where you want it, as well as when you stick the little pin back in it, it doesn't clog. I have not had any problems with this glue clogging, and I love it for all of those reasons. So I'm just dotting some glue around the die cut to make sure that it adheres in various different places, more than just the big panels. And so now I'm going to place the two panels together to glue them together. Press down a little bit. Because it's a liquid glue, I have a little bit of flex time so I can make sure that my alignment is good. So I'm going around and just pressing to adhere the two panels together. Going to break out that vacuum again. Quick cleanup. And then I'm going to apply some acrylic blocks to the panels just to give it a little bit of weight to make sure everything adheres down together well. We're going to move on to the layered pieces that are going to go into our 2 outer hexagons. So each hexagon is going to be filled with 3 pieces that are layered together. And so I decided to use a soft peach, a seafoam green, and then more of a teal color out of that sherbet smooth cardstock pad from scrapbook.com. So I've used my pokey tool, my craft pick rather, a couple more times to poke out all the parts and pieces of the die cuts. Going to use that vacuum cleaner again to clean up all those parts and pieces, as well as my Barely Arts glue to glue all the die cut pieces together for the hexagons. So this is going to make quick work of assembling all of these hexagons together. And I'm going to start with the most detailed layer and putting the glue on the back of that layer. I don't want to put the glue on the middle layer because the glue might end up being in places that the top die cut won't be. So then I'll have that glue kind of showing through the die cuts, and that's not a desirable look. So I'm going to put the glue on the back of the top piece and then glue it to the bottom piece. So I've glued the seafoam green and the teal pieces together, and then I'm going to add the peach at the back of that. And there you have it, all 3 layers together, and I think that is such a beautiful color combination, soft and very pleasing to the eye. So I'm going to put an acrylic block on that to weigh it down just a tiny bit, and then assemble the second one and put it under the acrylic block as well to give it a little bit of pressure. Now it's time to assemble all the pieces together to make the final card. So again, I'm going in with my Barely Arts glue and putting glue on the back of the panel to adhere it to my card base. This is a slimline card, and this is a typical slimline card size. So it is 3.5 by 8.5 in measurement. So I'm going along the sides of the panel and adding the glue because, again, I want this to adhere well, but I also don't want the glue to ooze and be seen. Adhering it to the panel, to the card base rather, getting everything lined up. And again, because this is a liquid glue, it gives me a little bit of wiggle time so I can make sure that my alignment is exactly where I want it to be. So what I want to show you here is that I use both the positive and the negative to create the sentiments here, but I'm only going to use the positive side for this particular card, but I can have that negative one to save for a card that I can make at a later time. And for the sentiment panel, I decided to go ahead and pop that up with some foam tape. So I put a couple of strips of foam tape on the back of that sentiment and placed it in the middle. So I'm getting it lined up. And I love the fact that with the sentiment being a hexagon shape, I can still see the little dots in the card panel around that hexagon. So I'm adding some Barely Arts glue to the back of the layered hexagons and adding those both to the left and to the right of the sentiment. So I'm getting the left one on there. Going to add some weight with an acrylic block. Now I'm going to get the right one down. And I'm going to place an acrylic block on this one as well. I like adding the acrylic blocks to add the pressure to make sure everything adheres well. To finish off the card, I'm going to add a few little gold foil pearls from Studio Katia as some embellishment to the card. And I'm going to use my jewel picker to add those, figure out my placement of those on the card. There are 3 different sizes of pearls in this mix. So I'm going to figure out which size I want where and place those on the card and just continue to play around until I think the combination is visually pleasing. And then once I've gotten my combination down, I'm going to use my jewel picker and my Barely Arts glue to glue the pearls down in place. I really like this jewel picker. It has 2 different ends you can see there. Sorry about my head in the way. one is a very small end, and then the other one is a larger end. So you should be able to pick up pretty much any embellishment that you need to use or want to use, no matter what the size is. And so with that, this card is complete. The detail in this card is both subtle but also very pretty and elegant. I think it fits with the way Spellbinders designed their dies, and I just love the way it came together. If you have enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel. You can also find me on Instagram as well as Facebook and at my blog, thedeltacrafter.com. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you next time. Enjoy!